Hello, everyone. I'm Shawna Benson from OCALI, and today with me is Stacy Springer, also from OCALI.
Hello. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to share, again, some more tips and strategies that we can use in our classroom for instruction. So today, we're going to focus a little bit on the integration of single and multi-message switches. So we have quite a few things, examples, just ideas to share, but I also want to reference a resource that you will have access to, all of our viewers will have access to after the session is finished. So I did put together a little bit of a list of ideas. The ideas that we're going to share today on the table are part of the list, but there are lots of other ideas, and I'm sure people can totally add to this list. It certainly is never ending, right?
Yeah, there are a ton of ideas to use single message voice output devices and sequential ones.
Right.
So we're only going to showcase a little bit.
A smidge. We only have 10 minutes, so we're going to really try to consolidate as much as we can. But you can kind of see the way we've outlined the resource that'll go along with this. We did try to cluster the ideas according to the type of switch. And again, that's kind of paired with whatever it is that we're teaching. So the idea here would be something that we're specifically trying to teach. And it also would pair also with the student as well. So depending on what the need of the student is, we might choose a single switch voice output with a single message, or we might choose a single switch that has a multi-message or even levels within it. And so there are ideas for different types.
Are we going to tell them what they are, or we're going to get to that later?
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to put this on the side and just kind of get us started. So I did reference this a little bit as we were just talking about some of the ideas. There are really three elements that I'm hoping everybody is really considering as they're planning for the integration of assistive technology in their academic lessons. And so what I hope that people are thinking about prior to actually putting the lesson together and getting in front of kids is that we're really thinking about what are we teaching, who are our students, and what specific needs do they have from an access standpoint, all of those different features of assistive technology. And then based on the needs of what we're going to use, like what we're teaching and the students and what they need to be able to use, what kinds of tools do we have that have those features? And so we're going to show and talk a little bit about the features of the tools we have here today. But really our emphasis is on the purpose, like what is the end goal or the end result of the lesson that we hope the students are ultimately learning and focusing on. So we really want people to get to this purpose piece, and I'll talk about the purpose with all of the ideas that we'll share today.
And this is a great resource, but it also reminds me exactly of the SET framework in a sense, where we have the student, and then we have the tools, and then we have the task.
Right.
So the environment we're talking about is the classroom.
Any environment.
Essentially,
truly,
your environment might be different, but student environment, task, and tools, any type of framework or resource that you have available to use is just a great way to anchor.
For sure.
Like how you're planning with purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, so let's get to what people really want to see and talk about, which are the actual ideas and the tools. So we're going to start with, again, single message, single switch devices. And I'm going to actually start with a science example, okay? So let's say that we're going to do a science lab. Let's say we are in early ed, so younger kiddos, grades like K through 3-ish. We happen to have a Go Talk button, which is just a single switch, single recording message device. And we also have some lab materials that are part of our lesson, okay? So let's say we're talking about very specific, our very specific vocabulary as our lesson is going on. So let's say we have our tray of objects. Right now we have just a tray of icons, but we could pair those, certainly. The students would actually have real objects that they're going to be testing. Because in addition to the tray, they're going to have a tub of water in front of them. Right.
So real life example, 3D objects, we're just showing the 2D.
Correct. Okay. Correct. So what we're ultimately trying to help them understand is the difference between an object and its properties when it would sink down to the bottom, or an object, and again, its properties that would cause it to float and stay on the surface. But we need students to understand both the concept and the word. And so some students are going to participate maybe using single switch voice output to assist in helping us know what they think about their tests.
Right, because they might not be able to use verbal communication. Right. And if you're just using the pictures to match, these might not have any meaning.
Right.
to them. So, okay, so we're going to use some
That's why the real objects are super important.
Yeah.
Like when we're actually experimenting, we want the real objects. But from a sorting standpoint, like let's imagine that the students in the class, we're doing this whole group, so we wanted it large so people can see. But each of the students would also have their own little graphic organizer that says float and sink at the top, and there would be a column blank with all of these icons that they're physically like sorting. That's going to be their lab report they're turning into us as a teacher. Okay.
Yep.
That's how I know what they thought each item did. It's how I get an assessment, a grade, and it's whether I think they're understanding these concepts and what they saw in the experiment.
So they could have their own pictures that they're sorting by pins, by Velcro, by magnets, lots of different ways.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. So let's say as the experiment is happening, a student drops in, let's say our pencil gets dropped into the tub of water, and the students are observing that, and we start to talk a little bit about what happened to that pencil. And we ask a specific student, did that pencil, did it float or did it sink? And so they may use a single switch voice output device because we've paired those already to set up our lesson with both vocabulary like sink. Sink. And then we would also pair it, and then we do have another switch that looks just like this for float. But I know that you wanted to share a little bit of information about, like, these are super tiny, and for some students, these are fine, but for other students, they may need a different surface.
Yeah, so when people talk about single message voice output devices, they could look a lot of different ways. They could be small on an angle, they could have a large surface area also on an angle, or they could even just be a very small targeted, like isolated finger activation. They all do the same thing. You can all record a message. So what you call it or what the brand name isn't as important as it is its purpose.
Yep.
So in order to record, and the other thing is these is what I like to refer to as naked switches. And so we often say, don't have naked switches.
Right. We don't want them
to be sure
to be naked.
that you have some type of picture icon. It could also be raised line. It could also
object,
high contrast. It could have an object. If you are doing a lesson and you don't have an icon ready to go, then you could also attach this to the device. And it is purely a representation for the student of what is this message that's recorded. So on this one, I'm going to turn it over. Most of them have directions, and it's very hard to see, but every device will have its own set of directions on it. And so with this one, we just turn the switch to turn it on, turn the knob to turn it on. And then I have a big red record button. And so this one also has levels, which I know we're going to get to. Not right now. We're only going to use it for one message. So I'm going to record float, and I'm going to hold down this red button and depress the top. Float. And then I'm just going to check it by activating it. Float. And that's it. So now we have our float and we have sink.
And we might put this again under the sticky or actually have an icon on top where they're touching the whole surface to hear that.
You could even do this with some Velcro. It could be very large, like that.
Right.
It's all what works for your students and what they need.
That's right. So this is one way that you can actually integrate voice output, single switch, single message devices into a tool like this. And I know that when you had it flipped over, there's our float again. This particular device, this is a big talk triple play. It does have a little switch here. You can see that Stacy had it like set on the single setting. The middle setting, when it's standing up straight, also gives us a sequence. And I love this device because this is kind of a rare feature that not all of the multi-message devices have, but this one has a randomizer also, where anything that you've recorded on your multi-layer or multi-message device, and I'm thinking of a new activity as we're like sitting here, but I'm thinking about like if we would have put all of these different objects on the sequenced message or the multi-layer recorded message, we could go to randomization And the message could call out one of the items from the tray, and the students could tell us by holding it up, like, was that item an item that when you did your experiment, did it sink or did it float? I think that's an important way, like just as you're going through the activity, to think through like different ways to integrate the tool and how students can use it.
And sometimes it's for assessment, and sometimes it's for participation.
Correct.
And so Shawna's been talking about sorting them a little bit more on assessment piece. But if you have a student who is not as familiar and it's an emergent for them as far as floating or sinking, and so you want to give them more of two options that might both sink. And so I could take here a quarter, and then what else I could bring here? I'd have to actually do this experiment. I would say a crayon. So you could also give them an errorless choice where both of them are going to sink. And so you could have that on two devices and then ask them which one is going to sink. And then no matter which one they activated, that would be the correct choice. So that is not testing or assessing what they know, but it's actually helping to teach them.
Yeah, and it allows them to participate too. There's a lot of Q&A that goes on in classroom instruction, and we want all students to make sure that they can participate. So this is just another way to kind of layer on some ideas from a science perspective, lots of other ideas to share as well. So let's talk about a couple of different examples. We'll start with single message, single recording devices or programming that we're going to use. And let's say we're sharing a book. Okay, so we have shared literature. It's something that we know is utilized in many classrooms. We happen to have picked something from a science-based concept. If we're studying different habitats, like pond in this case, there are many different habitats we could explore, but this one happens to come from a pond series of textbooks. And so let's say we pull the Jump Frog Jump book.
I love Jump Frog Jump.
Me too, so much fun. And I will say, I'm going to put a plug in for the OCALI Lending Library. We do have a kit related to this particular book that has lots of cool objects and artifacts that also help us tell the story and help students recall what's happening in the book. So just a little bit of a resource that you can potentially pull.
And I'm also going to plug for our accessible educational materials, because this is a standard book, but if you need a book in large print, Braille, or Twin Vision, you can also check that out from the Lending Library. So whatever type of accessible material your student needs. We're just showing this today.
We're just showing this version. And we are going to show the tech integration that we talked a little bit about. So these are some supports and scaffolds that also support the book and could be used also for choice making, communication, access, and things of that nature along the way. But this book has a feature in it that I love, and there are lots of books that have this feature, but I love books with repeat lines. And this particular book does have a repeat line in it, which I think we can take advantage of from the standpoint of a teacher sharing the book. Teachers shouldn't be the only ones that get to have the fun sharing the story. Students should really be involved in the sharing and the storytelling also. This is a great way for students to become a storyteller right along with their teacher.
Yeah, and the repetitive line helps with participation and engagement in the activity.
For sure.
Is what you're saying.
Whenever there's a repeat line, we talk a little bit about the type of participation. So in this case, repeat lines they happen in a particular place in the book. They don't happen constantly, but every once in a while typically. And the student has to be kind of paying attention and waiting for that time in the book where the repeat line occurs. So that we would call this timed participation. So the student is waiting, and then as soon as it's their turn or the time when the repeat line, then they're engaging the switch.
Yourself as the educator, teacher, therapist, paraprofessional, or family member, you could be doing the repeat line first. So as opposed to just giving that to your student that's never had that before, you might be modeling that.
That's great. I love the modeling part and mentioning that as well. So we do have on our single switch, this happens to be a Big Mac, it's a single switch, single message device. We've recorded the repeat line that came from the book, so we'll just press it in here. Okay.
In some of our other series, we talked about different types of single message voice output devices. So sometimes people will say these are single switch voice output devices, single message voice output devices. The important thing to know is, unlike just a single switch doesn't have a message. So these are recordable voice output devices, and you could use any type. You could use large ones, you could use small ones. They look very different. They all just have one button or one activation.
And again, it kind of depends back to that graphic and planning. What does the student need? Does the student need an angled surface? Like both of these devices have that feature. Some students may need a larger surface. Some students can handle a small surface. And you mentioned in our other video a naked switch versus making sure that it has an icon or whatever's going to be recorded. So you can see here, I'll just pull this cover off. You can see here that I've actually taken a kind of a snapshot of the line or the area in the book where the jump frog jump a line, repeat line comes from, and we're just attaching it. So our switch isn't naked anymore.
You could also, for a different purpose, just have the book icon. And like Shawna was saying, you could use these and position them lots of different places. So for a student who's unable to access the device with their hand, this could be mounted up at their head, and they could activate it by moving their head, their elbow, side swiping it. Lots of different ways to use the devices.
So many cool options. All right. So again, like keep in mind that our students are storytellers too, and we want to make sure that they're able to engage. So we talked about time participation, but we didn't talk about errorless participation. So one thing within this book, since it happens to be in a pond habitat, and there are indicators like the boat and things from the woods and animals and things of that nature, we could also program either single or multi-message switches that have sound effects that would be errorless. So just the environment, like the setting, what are the elements of the setting, and what things would you be hearing there? And you can actually have two students at the same time using the switch while the story is being told. One of the students is using errorless participation to kind of keep the sound effects going as the story is being told. Somebody's reading the book, and then when you get to that repeat line, then you have the student who comes in with the repeat line as well. So it can be layered.
And these objects, we talked about some of the accessible educational materials for the books, but these objects, if your student needs more support or a different support besides pictures, you could also attach the object to the device. I wouldn't do that because that's yellow on yellow. So I would probably go with this.
Books to the ceiling. Books to
I would probably go with this red one, but just thinking about high contrast, thinking about different objects. It could be a picture. It could be text.
Yeah, and we could even put the frog on here to pair with the, that's our turtle.
Oh, sorry, frog.
So that we have almost like the 3D layer cake with our 2D to give additional support. And there is a feature with some of the devices. I know the step-by-step comes also with other surface colors. And so you could potentially trade those out if you found that the color contrast was not quite right. So,
especially if a student really, really visually attended to red or yellow, you could change that.
Right. Absolutely. All kinds of things to think about. I'm going to switch now to poetry.
Okay.
Sometimes teachers shy away from poetry. Like, I don't know how to teach. I don't know if poetry is, how we're going to do this. But one thing that I love about poetry is often it's I'm going to actually show a poem really quickly from the Good Books, Good Times book. So this happens to be a poem about books, which I love. And this is an Arnold Lobel poem, Books to the Ceiling. And what I love about poems often is that they're very short in sentences or phrases. Sometimes they're pretty short from a length of passage standpoint. A lot of them are very easy to record. We're going to talk now about multi-message or step or layered devices when we're recording on our switches. So let's talk about poetry. And we did record an example. Do you want to show people the example first?
We did. I think we recorded on Miss Mary Mack.
We did record Miss Mary Mack.
And so all of the single message devices could be single message, one level, or they could have multiple levels. So this one's called a step-by-step. So it is a step-by-step with multiple levels. And we have 3 different levels on this. And so we're focusing on the, we've recorded on the first level. I'll show that, then we could demonstrate that. But it's also step-by-step, meaning multiple message played in sequence.
Correct.
So not just one.
Right. Not just one, it's a layer cake of messages. And so the way we use this layer cake of messages is, let's say the student is the one who wants to share this poem or story. So we've recorded the pages or the text within the pages so that they can access the sharing with either a partner assist for the page turn, or they may use assistive technology also as page turning as well. But we can also show that,
Miss Mary Mack.
all right. And then the story does continue on.
All dressed in black, black, black. With silver buttons, buttons, buttons. All down her back, back, back.
All right, so the story does go on. You can continue to record within the layers or the sequence within the message. But we also saw this other really cool poem that we may want, the student may want to share. So should we demo how to do a recording?
Sure, let's
Okay.
try. So I can keep that Miss Mary Mack recording on level 1.
Yeah.
So I'm not re-recording over it. And then I can move the toggle to level 2 or 3. And so on the back of this step-by-step actually has the exact directions of how to record. And you don't have to memorize this. I constantly look at the directions myself because they all come with different directions. So it's okay. Take your time and we will see how I do. So I have the device turned on. And then on the back, it says, press and hold the record until the light appears. Select the desired level. Press and hold switch top when speaking. So press and hold record, that means I'm going to start to record. That red light is on. I'm not recording right now. I'm recording when I activate the device. So I'm going to try to, let's see. I'm going to read this and record it loud. Books to the ceiling. Let's see how good my reading is. All right. Books to the ceiling. So that's one message. I'm going to keep going. Books to the ceiling. Books to the sky. So I'm going to do each message as a different line. Is that what you were thinking?
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking.
My piles of books are a mile high. Then you could actually get a little bit excited about that as well. You could also have a peer record this that might be the same voice as the student, not an adult voice. How I love them. How I need them. I'll have a long beard by the time I read them. And then would you record who it's by? You might say authored by, or you might just end there. It's all depends on the student and where they're at as far as understanding possibly authors or things like that.
Absolutely.
So I'm done recording. I have to hit the record button again to turn that light off. There we go. And then we're going to test it out.
All right, let's test. I'll turn this back around
So again, this could be mounted. You could also attach a switch to the back of this. So if it was on the table, you could have it mounted on a student's wheelchair or device or anything. So I'm going to show a little bit of various locations. Make sure it's up high.
Books to the ceiling. Books to the ceiling. Books to the sky.
And then the student would wait.
My piles of books are a mile high.
It could also be in front of them.
How I love them. How I need them.
They could also use it as a side swipe over here.
I'll have a long beard by the time I read them.
I love that poem.
Then if they keep going,
Books to the ceiling.
Right.
however many messages you recorded, it will go back to the first one. And I believe these devices is typically 60 seconds, a minute. I'll have to check that out, but those are only a few seconds at a time. So you have tons of recording time.
Yep. Yeah, lots of space. Now, so I love this with literacy. I mean, we've shown a couple of different examples, but there are so many other ideas. I mean, it really is kind of never ending. So we've been talking a little bit in a couple of our other videos about single and multi-message communication devices as an integrated support into academic instruction. And we've talked a little bit about science, a little bit about English language arts, but now let's talk a little bit about math. How can we integrate single message and multi-message devices to support students while they're learning different math concepts? So today I have lots of additional materials. So part of what we're also looking at, in addition to the integration of the actual visual assistive technology supports, we're also looking at manipulative types of supports as well. So tactile, specifically tactile and visual supports. And I know you have an OT background, right?
Yes,
So this is
absolutely.
near and dear to your heart, I would assume. And so
Yes.
share as many ideas as you can think of to integrate into our conversation today, please.
And just from, whether OT background or UDL background, of just thinking of multiple ways, multiple means, multi-sensory approach to engage students, and not just for all of the reasons we know, but also just to make it fun, which is motivating and how students will learn more.
Especially when some of our students need lots of practice. And in this case, we're talking about mathematics foundational skills, which for many students, they need many repetitions of practice before it becomes a really solid concept and is automatic within the brain, where we have automatic recall. So things like counting particularly, and not just counting single digit numbers and matching those to quantities, although that's super important. We also want to think about those kind of rote counting, and we want to get into multiples today. So multiplication. So we are going to talk a little bit about both, single number counting, but also multiples as well. So let's talk a little bit about some materials we may use when we're introducing concepts of numbers, quantities, and then again, multiplication. So I always like to look for books. I'm a book girl. So every time I think about numbers, quantities, and mathematics, I think books are underutilized in the area of mathematics. So I want to really reinforce that, like bring books into math as well as other subject areas. But this particular book, of course, it's based on a food. And there are actually a whole series of these books with lots of different types of little food manipulatives that can be used for different purposes in mathematics, but this one happens to be Cheerios related. But it does cover concepts of single digit counting, so one-to-one correspondence counting. But we also get into, as you go deeper into the book, where it gets into counting by fives, counting by twos, and counting, by tens. All right, so this book I think could come in handy as
So fun.
a scaffold to the lesson.
And another plug for various accessible educational materials, but also just various ways you could also read this book. So you could request this book in large print, Braille, or a different type of format or a digital format. You could also have this book on your computer and possibly have it read out loud for the whole classroom. So paper, digital, all sorts of materials. Really just think about your students.
Yeah, and adding tactile elements, especially with numbers and quantities. I love adding tactile elements even to the book or with the book. So we're going to talk a little bit about some tactile elements that we could potentially add in. All right, so this is our basic. We're going kind of from basic to more advanced skills. Let's say we wanted to support this count for a student who's not going to verbally be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can also use a multi-message, in this case, multi-level device, voice output device that actually helps the student count by or count the numbers. So we could have recorded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in our sequence, but let's say this time we're going to count by twos instead of fives. So I happen to have instead of a tens frame this time, let's talk up the ante a little bit and go to our hundreds chart. And I have two variations. I have the flat, typical, what you would see in a classroom. And also I'd say these are probably more common, anymore. So lots of different options again. But let's say we're counting by twos. One of the cool things about multiples is oftentimes if you're using hundreds charts to talk about or teach multiples, it almost creates a pattern, almost like a quilting pattern or a pattern within the hundreds chart. And I don't know that all students know that up front, but as they learn their multiples, they start to see that patterns emerge within the hundreds chart as they're counting by. So let's say we're going to count by twos this time, and we are going to do this whole class. Everybody's participating, and we're going to count together. And we want a student who doesn't speak verbally to also be able to participate. So what I did I'm going to show the back. This happens to be a big Talk Triple Play device, and you can kind of see at the back of the device there are lots of switches and buttons going on. This is just our on-off switch, so we have the device turned on. We do have options for a single message, but we don't want single message this time. We actually want a sequencing message, which is the toggle straight up and down. We have already recorded the ones on the 1 level, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we're going to switch it over to level 2, which is where we have our 2s recorded, okay? So Stacy, would you help me and count by 2s?
And we might already be at 6, so you could go ahead and model 2.
All right, I'm going to model 2, 4, 6, which is what we just heard.
And then it's my turn.
Yep.
8.
Okay, and I'll push it down. And then, do you want to do another one?
10.
Okay, and I forget how many. I think there's one more.
12.
All right.
So again, this this device has a image, a picture symbol on it of 2. This could also be a very tactile 2 that with a wiki stick, it could be large, it could be bigger, lots of different ways to kind of provide support for students.
Absolutely. And we could switch it up. So the faceplate or the cover of this switch actually comes off, and we're going to switch it to level 3.
Okay, and I'm going to turn it off because as soon as I pull this faceplate off, it's going to keep counting. So I'm going to turn that off. I turned it off. Then I'm going to pull this piece of plastic off, which has a little bit of a suction.
Let's do 5.
And then we're going to put a 5 on. So this is just a plastic faceplate. If you don't have that, that's fine. You can just Velcro the picture.
Correct.
You don't have Velcro, you can just tape it on.
Yep.
It's okay.
No big deal.
Or a Post-it note.
Yep. All the above.
So I'm going to just push that on. And it's not exactly in the center, but we're going to keep on going.
Okay.
So
Run.
I'm turning it on, and you said you were
level 3.
Level 3. It was on level 2. So I'm turning the level, so my 2 is still there.
Yep.
It's still still
we don't
saved.
have to re-record that.
Now we have 5.
All right, so we have 5 starting out. So we're going to start off with, I'll start us out with 5, and you can count with me. Ready? 5. Let's do it again.
10.
15.
20.
Whoops, my 15 minute. I'm not sure if I have 25, but let's try it.
25.
25. I think I went to 50.
30.
30.
35.
And this could also be a switch up here.
40.
40.
45.
And then let's look at the pattern that's emerging because we already see all these numbers depressed. So we kind of have an indicator here visually where this pattern is going to go next with our last one. All right. And then we could, again, count by tens. We can count by any multiple and show the representation here. We can have the voice output here, and students can participate in using any one of these types of tools. So just some ideas on how to integrate some single switch and in this case, multi level sequenced messages into the math lesson today.
Yeah. And whatever type of students you have in your classroom, if they're unable to access this, we have other types of switches and devices and can help problem solve how you can make sure that they can participate and access the math lesson.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Stacy, for helping me share today. I hope everybody has fun with all of the new tools, and for certain, hope our students have lots of fun with their new tech integration in the lessons. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.